Whenever a knife shows up in a movie, my brain does this thing. It's like an instant alert. I want to know what that knife is, who made it, and can I buy it? It actually happened to me a while ago when I was watching the movie A Quiet Place. There's this shot where John Krasinski uses a knife to slice an apple. And I needed to know what the hell that knife was. So I paused the movie, I opened Google, and suddenly I'm 5 tabs deep trying to figure out what this knife is. My wife loves when I pause movies, by the way. The internet, in its vast confidence, swears that the knife in that movie is a Half-Faced Blades Disaster Jr., and that was actually the first time Half-Faced Blades hit my radar. So of course, I had to do some research, and down the rabbit hole I went. And here's what I've learned. Half-Faced Blades starts with one man. His name is Andrew Arrabito, and he spent most of his childhood outdoors. For him, that's where things made the most sense. When he was 7 years old, he tragically lost his brothers and his father in a plane crash in Alaska. That kind of loss stays with you, even if you don't understand the weight of it until later. So when he eventually joined the SEAL teams, something he had locked onto as a kid, those guys became his family, like real family. And he speaks about them in a way that most people never talk about anyone. And when an injury crushed his hand and forced him out, making knives was his way of staying connected to his family, making tools his brothers could depend on. And that's the part of the Half-Faced Blade story that really hooked me. Here's a guy who had gone through a lot in his life and he needed something to really pour himself into, something that felt grounded and purposeful. And when you zoom out, there's something really ancient about that. Since the very beginning, blades have been the tools that humans shape when survival, identity, and purpose are on the line. So the fact that Andrew rebuilt his life through that same instinct, that's something pretty special. So the name Half-Face threw me for a loop at first because it does sound kind of a little intense if you're not familiar with the brand. But what I've learned is that there are basically 3 stories to the name and they all kind of overlap. There's the tactical version of the story where it's Andrew painting the top half of his face black to kill glare behind the optics. There's the philosophical version as well where there's 2 sides to every person, one civilized side and the other side that steps into chaos when it's needed. And then there's the 3rd version that's more of like the frontier warrior vibe that I think he leans into the most. So that's the war paint, the mohawk, the wilderness, the whole half composed, half wild aspect of it. The thing is, none of these contradict each other and they're all true in their own way. And once you hear them, the whole brand starts to make a lot more sense. All right, real quick, before I show you guys these 2 beautiful Half-Faced Blade knives, we have to show some love to the sponsor of this video, The Knife Connection. Now, I met Jason, the owner of TKC, back at CanCon a few months ago. Him and I grabbed dinner, and while we were chatting about knives in the EDC community, what stood out to me was his passion for getting to know makers. He's out there meeting them and learning their stories, and that's the kind of energy I love seeing from a knife retailer. TKC started as a small family shop back in 2008, and since then, they've now become one of the go-to spots for anything knives and outdoor gear. What makes them stand out to me is they offer fast shipping, great customer service, and free shipping on anything over $99. And they have a solid lineup, everything from EDC to hunting and outdoors to kitchen knives. They've got you covered on every single front. So thank you to TKC for sponsoring this video. If you're looking for your next everyday carry or outdoor knife or kitchen knife, check them out. I'll go ahead and have their links down below. Now, let's get into some Half-Faced Blades knives. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about the brand, let's talk knives. So the first knife that I really wanted to check out from Half-Faced was the Disaster Folder. Now, my buddy JB over at the Bearded Burton YouTube channel had one of these, and it was the first time that I saw it. And since then, this knife has just been in the back of my head. What I really love about this folder is that it's an aluminum integral. Now, if you're not in the knife world, an integral means that the handle of this knife was machined from one piece of aluminum. And that's really unique because it requires a lot of skill and machining knowledge to achieve something like this. Overall, the Disaster Folder is super comfortable in the hands. I like that the flipper tab here acts like a guard, so this thing really hooks on. You get a little bit of that hook here at the very back, so this feels like a hard use knife without it feeling like too bulky or cumbersome, which is really cool. The action on it is really nice and smooth, a really well done button lock. I'm usually somebody who doesn't love a lot of billboarding on my knives, but Half Face Blades has a pretty cool logo, and they display it on the back side of the blade there, which is really sick. You have a kind of Spyderco Lynch Northwest style clip. It is reversible, so lefties, you do get some a little bit of love here from Half Face, which is pretty neat. So that is the Disaster folder. Very stoked to add one of these to the collection. A very well done design. USA made integrals are fairly rare, so it's pretty neat to add one of these to the collection. Let me know down in the comments if this is something you would carry, because for me, I've definitely enjoyed having this guy in the pocket. All right, so let's talk fixed blades, because Half Face Blades has some of the most beautiful fixed blades in their lineup. So I was really stoked that Jason over at the Knife Connection was able to send out this Disaster Cub. This thing is beautiful. Black ash burl scales, mosaic pins. There's copper in here as well. G10, blue G10, I think G10 liners. This thing is, in my opinion, a work of art. I really love the texturing that he has done on these scales. This for me is like right at the edge of being a little too small. I can have a 4-finger grip on it and have just the smallest amount of scale showing. The blade has some beautiful rock kind of texturing along the spine here. You get a little bit of like a thumb ramp here, so that way you can choke up. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. And I think that there's a little bit of controversy there, because if you learn Andrew's story, you would assume that he makes hard-use tools. And I think that a lot of times people just don't think that you can have a hard-use tool and also have it be beautiful. So for me, this Disaster Cub is just a really good example of that. Why can't you have a beautiful fixed blade that you can also beat up on? Let's talk about sheaths, because this is where I'm gonna deduct a couple of points. I really don't like this kind of clip. I think a knife like this should come with an Ulti or a DCC, period. DCC is my personal favorite. The Kydex is done really well. The only thing I wish is that there was a bit of a thumb ramp at the top here. I found it pretty hard to find that kind of groove where I can push the knife out. And I understand that maybe this is supposed to be like on a belt, on a rig, so you're most likely going to be kind of ripping the blade out of the sheath. But as somebody who would EDC this knife, I definitely wish that thumb ramp was there just to kind of get it in and out of the pocket a little better. That's just kind of my personal opinion. The inside of the Kydex is lined, which I think is a really nice touch. The only time I've ever seen a sheath lined like this was when I bought my Winkler. So it's not a common thing, but it's a nice touch. Makes it feel more premium. Half Face Blades is about a guy with real loss, real experience, and a real reason to make these tools. That's why for me, they feel very intentional, very personal, and they're not for everyone, which I think that's kind of the point. The Disaster folder and the Cub both have this energy that feels like they were made and designed by somebody whose life has depended on gear before. And after everything I've learned, that definitely tracks. This is the kind of stuff that I love about the everyday carry community. I love diving into these stories and learning about people that have such a crazy past, and somehow through all these little events, it led them here to a position where they're now making these tools that you and I can carry every day and build our own stories around. To me, Half Face Blades has this history and this purpose to it that I think it's harder to understand unless you handle some of these knives. So it's been an absolute honor to be able to dive into this story and share it with you guys, because I was really excited. A big thank you to the Knife Connection for allowing me to handle these, and that way I can give you guys a stronger and deeper story with some of my feelings mixed into them. So if you want to check out another YouTube video where I discovered a knife from a movie, check out this video here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.